Hey everybody, Jay Super Awesome here. I'd like to welcome you all to episode number 2 of my 31 Days of Horror in October. In this video, I will be showing you everything I watched from October 4th through October 10th. Let's have a look. October 4th, 2020, I watched Monstrous. Something is out there. I have to say that going into this movie, I had my expectations set very low. I'm not really for sure why. Maybe it was because I hadn't heard anything at all about this movie, and I hadn't even seen a trailer for it. So this was basically a blind buy for me. I picked it up simply because it had a Bigfoot on the DVD cover art. As the movie started, the opening sequence really put me in mind of Exists, another Bigfoot movie. And if you haven't seen Exists and you are a fan of Bigfoot movies, then it's a high recommendation for me because it's my favorite Bigfoot movie of all time. So as I watched this opening sequence, my expectations dropped even lower because I was really starting to be concerned that this movie wasn't going to have nothing new to bring to the table. And I have to say that Monstrous turned out to be a very pleasant surprise. I highly enjoyed this movie. Not only is it a great creature feature, but it very effectively blends other subgenres of horror together perfectly for a very unique viewing experience. Now, I'm not going to say what subgenres are being mixed here, but it's a really good twist that you have to see for yourself. In this movie, Whitehall, New York is notoriously known for its Bigfoot sightings. A young girl is in search of her friend that has gone missing in that area. She meets up with a girl online who is a photographer. They decide to travel together to Whitehall, New York to split the cost. It did seem to take some time for the story to get going, but this movie does a great job of character development, and I thought that the overall payoff was well worth it. Monstrous is a highly entertaining creature feature. October 5th, 2020, I watched Basket Case 2. Belial is back, and this time he's brought back a few friends. This is my first time watching Basket Case 2, as was last year during October was my first time watching the original. So I have been doing one each year for October. And man oh man, what a creature feature we have with part 2. I think that overall I like the first movie a little better as far as the storyline goes, but I absolutely love seeing all the freaks in Basket Case 2. There's so many unique monsters to see in this movie, I found myself constantly scanning the screen, hoping to catch a glimpse of even more creatures, and I really feel like that was the most entertaining thing about this movie. Of course, I wanted to see Belial and Dwayne's storyline to continue, and I thought the storyline was pretty decent. I really liked how part 2 picked up immediately after the first movie ended. Even though they were released around 8 years apart, as we pick up from the first movie, Dwayne and Belial have survived their fall and have been rescued from the hospital by Dwayne's Aunt Ruth, who goes by the name of Granny Ruth in this movie because she has a secluded mansion that she has filled with freaks and oddities, and they refer to her as Granny Ruth. So she takes Dwayne and Belial back to her mansion in hopes of them living out the rest of their days in peace. But of course, this story is way too big and a reporter is hot on their trail. So that's the basic plot description, and there's not really a lot more to it than that, other than Dwayne and Belial's newfound love interests. So I'm going to leave it at that, but I will say that I really did enjoy this movie. I did think that it ended very suddenly, so I was a little disappointed with that, but I know that there's a Basket Case 3, and I look forward to seeing it and reviewing it for next year's 31 Days of Horror in October celebration. I really did enjoy Basket Case 2. October 6, 2020, I watched Legend of the Werewolf. Now, Legend of the Werewolf is a movie that I have owned on VHS for a really long time, but it has been a really long time since I had watched it. Recently, I started buying up a lot of Frankenstein, werewolf, and vampire DVDs for my collection because looking at my collection, I felt like I was lacking some of the titles I really wanted to have. So I headed over to eBay and started picking up a few. And one of them I ended up getting a really good deal on was this Legend of the Werewolf DVD. I have to say that for the most part, I enjoyed Legend of the Werewolf, even though I do consider it to be a slow burn. The movie takes place during the early 19th century where we have a traveling circus who finds a feral boy roaming the woods They capture him and end up calling him the Wolf Boy, and he becomes their main attraction. In time, the young boy grows into a man, and due to some very unfortunate circumstances, he ends up murdering his captives who have taken care of him for so many years. He runs off to Paris and gets a job working at a very pitiful-looking zoo. He falls in love with a woman that we find out is a prostitute. He develops a jealous, overprotective crush on her that leads him to attack her clients. As the body count rises, what initially appeared to be animal attacks, it's now believed that something more evil and sinister stalks the streets of Paris. I guess this is a good time as any to mention that Peter Cushing is in this movie, and that alone is a selling point for a lot of horror fans. In this movie, he plays as a very curious mortician who examines the bodies as they are being brought in. He believes there's much more to the murders than just simply being animal attacks. As he continues to inform the police, they become very determined to solve the case and put an end to this killing spree. Overall, I had a decent time watching The Legend of the Werewolf. It's a little hard for me to recommend because it is a little bit of a slow burn. I absolutely love the look of the werewolf in this movie. I thought it was a fantastic design. I feel like the werewolf design and the fact that this movie has Peter Cushing is the selling point for fans of classic horror. Wednesday, October 7th, 2020, I watched Frankenstein's Hungry Dead, and for Wednesdays throughout October, I have decided to do Wild Eye Wednesdays. And I have to say that I had a blast watching Frankenstein's Hungry Dead, and to me it's more of a zombie movie than a Frankenstein's monster type of movie, even though we do get a Frankenstein's monster looking character towards the end of the movie. It's still more of a zombie movie in my opinion, but I guess you could argue that Frankenstein's monster is basically a zombie if you want to look at it that way, because he is being reanimated from parts from dead bodies. Anyway, the storyline for this one is we have a group of characters who are serving time in detention at school. Their teacher has decided to give them the option of getting out of their detention time by going to a local horror wax museum. Now, you can't beat an offer like that. Of course, they accept and later on meet their teacher at the Horror Wax Museum. The tour is being hosted by Charles Franks, and while this tour is taking place, some of the students have decided to sneak back in later on because one of the girls has a fantasy about having sex in the wax museum that she's looking to fulfill, and of course she has a boyfriend who is more than willing to help her out. And now going back to Charles Franks, he is attempting to create the perfect human being from parts from dead bodies that he has been collecting. His failed experiments are zombies that he has set free to deal with the trespassers. And that's the basic plot description, and I have to say that I really enjoyed Frankenstein's Hungry Dead. Most of the movie was shot and filmed in a real-life horror wax museum in Salem, Massachusetts, so I thought that was really cool. It was really cool to look around the wax museum to see all the horror legends on display. While Charles Franks is doing his tour around the museum, he talks about Alfred Hitchcock and Psycho. He also talks about Christopher Lee and the horror of Dracula, and somebody actually says the best Dracula, and I couldn't agree more. This museum is filled with the likes of Freddy, Jason, and Beetlejuice, along with several other classic monsters from the Hammer horror films. October 8, 2020, I watched Fear Farm. Fear, P-H, Arm? Fear Farm. Step inside your worst nightmares. On the back of the DVD it says a Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe with a bit of a Rob Zombie-ish feel. And I agree a little bit more with the Rob Zombie-ish feel than I do the Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe. I'm also going to give the plot description that's on the back of the DVD instead of freestyling it like I have been doing. If 4 high school seniors make it through the VIP section of the haunted corn maze in under 2 hours, they will win a big cash prize, a task that appears simple enough, but too good to be true. As they start their adventure, the cash prize looks like a sure thing, but circumstances change as night falls, and the once lethargic eerie creatures in the maze turn out to be a deranged family of human skin harvesters. So overall, I thought this movie was just okay. There was something about it that felt a little off to me, as if something was missing, or maybe it was just me expecting something more from it. I absolutely loved the corn maze setting of the movie, and I loved all the different costumes that the killer family were wearing. And there was a pretty wide variety of characters that were stalking the corn maze that includes clowns and a chainsaw-wielding madman, among others. And that's what I liked most about the movie, was the cornfield setting and the costume design of the killers. And basically this cult family kidnaps their victims to harvest their skin. And the thing is, they're actually searching for a certain skin type so they can keep them alive and constantly harvest their skin. It sounds pretty gruesome, but they don't actually really get into it until much later on in the movie. So that's basically what this family of cult skin harvesters are up to. And I guess I should mention they are using the skin that they are harvesting to make skin lotion so people can look younger. I thought the storyline of setting the characters up to lure them into the maze with the promise of prize money was pretty solid, but there's something about the cult family who hunt people for their skins that just feels a little off to me. Even though I do like the overall concept of the movie, I feel like the end result of the movie felt a little underwhelming to me. With that being said, I still do feel like slasher movie fans will want this one in their collection. October 9, 2020, I watched The Curse of the Fly. As this movie starts off, we have a young woman escaping a mental hospital in her bra and panties. And right away I can tell you that I was pretty surprised by this opening. I can understand from a filmmaker's perspective why you would want to do this, because as a viewer, it grabs your attention right away. But realistically, I couldn't imagine anyone trying to run off without being fully dressed. But then again, I am talking about a fly movie, so who needs realism anyway? And besides, who am I to judge? This woman is breaking out of a mental hospital, and we don't know who she is at this point, or what she's even doing there. So her being in her bra and panties might be perfectly normal for her. Anyways, moving on. Her name is Patricia Stanley, and she soon runs into Martin Delambre, who was the grandson of the doomed teleportation scientist Andre Delambre. And within days, the two fall in love and marry. Now this, of course, is a marriage filled with secrecy because they don't truly know anything about each other. As a viewer, we already know what to expect from Martin. He is cursed to repeat his family's past failures. But Patricia's character remains a mystery. Of course, seeing how she has broken out of a mental hospital, Patricia has people who are looking for her. So obviously, the longer this couple stays together, the more secrets are going to be known. What's really interesting is that Patricia starts to see and hear things that are going on around the Delambre house and grounds. The more she starts to suspect something is going on, the harder they try to convince her that it's simply not real and it's only a bad dream. So after Martin has found out about Patricia escaping a mental hospital, he starts to use that against her. Of course, what she has been seeing and hearing is real, and there's actually people who are deformed and mutated by the radiation from the teleportation device that have been secretly hidden away on the family property. Overall, I really enjoyed this movie. I had a fun time watching it, but it didn't come without some disappointment. Now, I usually don't do this, but I'm going to give a minor spoiler here, so if you don't want to hear it, just slide a little ahead to the next review. Okay, so the disappointment that I referred to was this movie actually doesn't have a fly creature, and considering that this is a fly movie, that's a pretty big disappointment for me. This movie mostly focuses on the cursed family and how they are doomed to continue to fail at perfecting their teleportation device. It was cool that we got some other deformed creatures, but it was disappointing not to get a fly creature. But at the end of the day, I can understand them not wanting to make the same movie over and over again. So I do accept that, and like I said, overall, I did enjoy The Curse of the Fly. October 10, 2020, I watched Puppet Master Axis Rising. Puppet Master Axis Rising picks up immediately after the events of Puppet Master Axis of Evil, and we continue our storyline with Danny and Beth. And something I need to mention is that these characters have been recast for this movie, so we still have the same characters, just new actors playing the parts. And to give a quick recap, Danny is a guy who has a disability in one of his legs and was unable to join the war effort against the Nazis, but has gained control of Toulon's puppets and uses them in the fight against the Nazis along with his girlfriend Beth. So with Danny and Beth having stopped the Nazis' evil plot in the previous movie, Axis of Evil, they are now being praised by the U.S. military and have been joined by Sergeant Stone. as they uncover a new evil plot by a Nazi leader who has kidnapped one of the world's smartest doctors, who is being forced to create a serum to bring the dead back to life to be used as soldiers. Of course, that plan fails, and basically what ends up happening instead is the Nazis end up with their own group of puppets that fight against Talon's puppets. One of the things that I find to be fun about the Puppet Master movies is seeing what puppets are going to be in each film. In this one we have Blade, Tunneler, Jester, Leechwoman, Pinhead, and their ultimate weapon, Six Shooter. And on the other side, the evil side, the kidnapped doctor has created his own group of puppets. We have Bombshell, Blitzkrieg, Wolfmitch, and Kamikaze. And with this we end up with a showdown of good puppets against evil puppets. And I have to say that that's the highlight of this movie for me. Overall, I like the continuation of the storyline, even though it's nothing spectacular. I did enjoy Axis Rising more than Axis of Evil, and it's mainly because we get more puppet action in this movie. The acting and the dialogue isn't all that great in this movie. In fact, I'm not a big fan of faking accents, of course, unless you are good at it, but that wasn't the case for the actors in this movie. But I don't want to cut this movie down too much because, after all, it is full moon, and in general I give them a pass for certain flaws and just go with it and have a good time. In closing, I wanted to mention that Axis Rising is considered to be the 10th movie in the Puppet Master franchise, but if you include Puppet Master vs. Demonic Toys, it would technically make this the 11th movie. But anyway, maybe that's a story for another time. Okay, so there you have it. This has been episode number 2 of my 31 Days of Horror in October. Be sure to tune in next Sunday for episode number 3. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment below. Let me know what you think about the movies in this video. Be sure to hit the notification bell for future J Super Awesome videos. And as always, I'd like to thank you all for watching.